So here's our little design, just an arbitrary shape that includes some holes, some pockets, and an exterior cut with some fillets. So we'll look at creating this now. Okay, we're going to mock up a project based on a sketch of an arbitrary little shape, this little wooden thing, and we're going to do it in Adobe Illustrator. So we're going to look at some of the basic sort of drafting techniques you might use to create a shape like this in Illustrator. Okay, so we kicked that off with a new template, and now I'm going to first up just zoom in here, and then I'm going to place my shape in this top corner. So I'm just going to move all of this down a little bit. There we go. And now I'm going to start here in a new layer called layer 2. So this is the new layer button. If I ever want to delete that, I can drag that down to the trash can. So just remember, this is how things are stacked vertically. So these are underneath this, which is underneath this. So if I made a shape like this, it's a dark gray with a white background. Now it's black. This is the fill, this is the stroke. So if I put this on top of this, you'll notice it occludes all of that. And if I drag it down, it's like layers of paper. You can see it's on top of some things, but not others. So see how it behaves. So we'll just delete that, and we're going to move that back up to the top, and I'll collapse this and lock it. Actually, we're not going to be using this for a little bit, so I'll hide it as well, so it won't interfere with my snapping. So we're going to work on layer 2, and I'm going to start by creating a rectangle in this top left corner. So you see it says intersect as I hover over that corner, and I just drag out like this. So the shape is 4 inches wide. Now, at the top here, it will automatically tell me, the critical things I need to know, like the fill, the stroke, line types, the opacity, and here are the transforms. There's also the corner detail as well. So what I'm going to first do is tell this to be exactly 4 inches wide and 3 inches tall. So I can either hit transform here, so that brings up a little temporary transform menu, or I can go to Windows, transform. So you just scroll down here and click transform. You'll notice it brings up a more complete transform window. So I'm going to work in here. So you'll notice this number is the same as this number, and this number is the same as this number. So I will make it 4 inches wide. You'll notice this is scaling about the center point. So that's this point here. If I did it, I could tell it to scale about the top left corner, bottom right, whatever. We're going to leave it at center. Actually, we'll make it top left for this one, because that's already aligned where we want it. We snapped that into the corner initially. So I'm going to make it 4 inches wide and 3 inches tall. We're not going to change any of this other stuff. That's all good. Now I'm going to change these corner details. We're going to zoom in first. Look at this. And I'm just going to double check that I'm aligned with the corner here. So that's snapped to the top. That's intersecting. So we're good. Now I have a white stroke on the outside. I don't actually want that. I want that to be a no stroke, or I can turn my little template on and go down here and find the I could eyedropper click on this here, and I'd get the right color. Hide this. Okay, so that's correct. Now we need to do these corner fillets. So that is going to be done with this here. So they are 0.5 inches. And you'll notice they'll all go rounded over like that. So that's great. And now I'm going to create circles at the center of them. So referring to our sketch, the circles are 0.28 inches diameter. So that's good. I am going to deselect this so that I'm not manipulating those corners, and then select my ellipse tool again and see if I can get it to snap here to these two anchor points. So you'll see there's the, if I hover over them and then move to the center of that radius, I can click and drag. Now you'll notice a couple of things of interest. I can make this any shaped ellipse, and it's starting to create it based on the top left corner or a corner, depending on which direction I go. Now there's some modifier keys. On Windows, it's if I hold down Alt, you'll see it will center on that initial location I clicked. Now I just need to make sure it stays as a circle. So I can hold down Shift, we'll do that. Now I can release Alt, so I'm holding down Alt and Shift currently. If I release Alt, you'll see it's now always creating a circle, but it's a corner-based circle, 2-point circle. I want a center-based circle, so I hold down Alt and Shift. Now I'm not going to get too hung up on the actual size of it, because we can go into our transform settings here. Now I'm going to transform about the center, and I'm going to lock the height and width constraints. So that means when I scale one, I'll scale both. So I'm going to make that 0.28. So I guess this is designed to accommodate 0.25 inch hardware. So hit enter on that. You'll notice they both update. If this was disabled, it would be like when I originally changed the shape of the rectangle. I could do them both independently. I'll leave that locked. Okay, so now I'm going to color code this by zooming out, zoom out, and panning around until I find the right thing. So I'm going to use the eyedropper tool, and I'm going to select my interior cut. So it's become a black stroke and a white fill. So that's exactly what we want for cutting that hole with origin. So over here in our layers menu, we can check our layers at any time. So we've got a rectangle and an ellipse. This is actually a circle because we made sure of that when we created it. So that's rendering on top of our rectangle. If we couldn't see it, it could be that we're rendering it underneath our rectangle. So I'm going to do this as an example. I can select it. It's selected based on my layer color, which is this sort of pinkish maroon color. But it's not going to be visible because it's underneath my rectangle. So I'm going to put it back on top of the rectangle and make it visible. There's another little trick that is a good idea. Before you export to Origin, take a look at the View Outline feature. So this gets rid of all the fills, all that kind of data, but it enables you to look directly at the paths you've created. So if you have a bunch of weird overlapping shapes that you don't intend to cut, and there's paths there, this is a good way to quickly diagnose that. So looks like we're all good at the moment. So I'm going to go back and say View, Preview on CPU. So that's Control Y on Windows to change that. So I'm going to now set up some guides so that I can quickly copy these circles around to the center points of these radius. So you'll notice here the rulers are on. So under View, if I go to Rulers, Hide Rulers, there's no reference size up the top, measurement guide. So if I go Rulers, Show Rulers, now I can drag from these and select basically these anchor points. So you'll notice that aligns with that. And I'll do the same here. Anchor point, the same applies to the top. If I find the anchor points, because these are circular fillets, I can confidently say that's the center of this radius. So Now when I click and drag by holding down Alt, I can snap to these reference points. So you'll see it says intersect. So that's good. And then I can select, I can just keep doing it, Alt. So this is duplicate when I hold down Alt. And when I move, you'll notice I can move randomly, and it usually applies. You can also hold down Shift, and that will lock you into a orthogonal world. So it's either 45 degrees or 90 degrees. So you'll notice these little pink, sort of lilac purple lines popping up. They're guides just helping you align to various elements. So if you pay attention to them, you can usually get a good alignment of everything. So you'll see my guides have all shown up as separate elements, and then I've got my 4 ellipses and my rectangles. So that's great so far. Now I need to get another guide and drop it in the center here. So that is going to be halfway between 0 and 3, so 1.5. Now this one I placed, and it was kind of vague. It is not exactly where I want it, and I've noticed now I can't select that guide. So I'm going to go View, Guide, and go Unlock Guide. So now you'll see when I select it, it changes color to whatever the layer is that it's on. So this one, I want it to be under the Transform menu. I want its Y height to be 1.5. So we'll leave everything else the same. So now I can confidently say that's at the halfway point between the top and the bottom. We'll actually do the same here for this one. In fact, so it's supposed to be back there. So that's halfway to 4, so that's 2. You'll notice I can either do it up here or down here, whatever's easiest. So 2 inches in X. So this is the width and this is the position. So X is 2. That's good. Now we need one more that's 1 inch from the bottom. So we'll set that up as well. So it needs to be at 2 exactly in Y. So we'll do that here. 2. And then another one. No, that should be all we need to create the shapes we need to finish this up. So I'm going to go back and lock my guides. So down here to guides and lock guides. So now I'm going to create a circle over here for that little notch in the side. So it's centered here. It's 1 inch diameter. So we know that this is ½ inch. So if we align with that, we should be good. So we get intersect at that point. If I hold down Alt and Shift on Windows, I can now intersect at that point. So this ellipse and this rectangle I want to combine. So I'm going to use the Shape Builder tool to do this. So I'm going to select the 2 shapes that I want to do a Boolean operation. Basically, I want to cut this circle out of this rectangle. So I'm going to select the rectangle, holding down Shift. So you'll notice I can select it either in the viewport or by the layer, based on this little red dot here. So top one is the ellipse, and holding down Shift, the rectangle is the other one. So then I go to Shape Builder. I'd suggest you get used to using the Shape Builder. It's actually very powerful for a lot of these things. So you notice it says plus there. So it's just finding all of the profiles, much like Fusion finds continuous 3D or continuous closed shapes. So by default, the little icon saying, highlighting that area and saying plus. If I hold down Alt, I can click it and it will be a delete. It goes to a minus. You'll see that there. So click. So that's great. It's blown away that. And it's left the remainder as another element. Keep an eye on that sort of thing. We actually might as well delete that now so it doesn't show up in our file. Anytime there's weird stuff hidden, floating around, if it's not something you need to reference to align other things to, just delete it. so that it doesn't turn up in your exported file on tool and make things complicated. So now this is one continuous shape. So I'm just going to go back to the select mode. Now we need to make our little pockets and we're good to go. So this, if I hold down on the rectangle, the ellipse tool there, I can go back to rectangle. And then I'll just start dragging here and hold down Alt so it's centered. And I should be able to snap to this. Okay, so that's the initial shape I want here. It is not wide enough, so I need it to be 0.5 wide. You notice it's scaled everything up, so we're going to just now move this. And I'm going to hold down Shift, and you'll see it snapping to that intersection point, that line. So this actually needs to go all the way down to the 1. So I'm going to just move that edge down a little. And then if I move the whole thing, holding down Shift, you'll notice it intersects there and snaps. So we can overlap at the top, and then we'll just add these, I'll drag this up a little. These points here, when I hover over them, you notice it shows a little fillet icon. So this is actually, because all 4 are selected, as I drag them in, you'll notice it go to 0.25. And that's updated, that's mentioned here as well. So that's a corner type. You can choose different shapes. We actually just want the regular radial fillet. So that makes that a arc running the whole way around there, 0.25 radius, which makes sense for a 0.5 wide element. So I'm going to color code this as a gray shape. I can either just click here and choose a gray. Any gray in there is fine, so long as it's got no color, no saturation in it. And then I just need to duplicate this twice. So I'm actually going to use my guides again. So I want 0.75 less than 2, so 1.25. And then another 0.75 beyond 2. So we will take our guides and unlock them. Now I can select it. So I almost got it right. 2.75 and 1.25. So now when I select my pockets again, I'll just take my guides and lock them. So selecting these pockets again, if I've got the selection tool, if I hold down Alt, we've done this before, and move it, it's now duplicating that element, and you can see it's intersecting there. I'm holding down Shift, so it's a copy that's aligned straight, and then I'll do the same this opposite way, holding down Alt and dragging, and then if I hold down Shift, it will be aligned, and it says intersect with my guide. So these 3 pockets are now, I can cut them out of here with a 1/4 inch cutter, and all my other geometry is ready to go. So I will delete my, I have to unlock this first. So I'm going to zoom out just so we see, sorry, Alt. I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to delete this. I can either delete all these here by selecting them in the viewport, or I can select them down here and go hit the delete button, or drag that whole layer to the trash. So we'll do that. And I'm going to select my rectangle and say Object, Artboard, Fit Selected. So you'll notice that just got rid of the remainder of the artboard. All that means is the icon is going to be derived from that shape, not the huge panel with a little dot in the corner. So this, I can go View, Hide Guides. The guides won't export, so forget about them. And zoom in. The last thing to do is just double check that you don't have any with the outline mode. double check there isn't any weird geometry floating around. So it looks like we're all good. We've got a bottom rectangle, 4 circles, a few guides, they don't export, and then 3 rectangular pockets with the corners filleted. So if I go back to preview on GPU, sorry. So then we'll save this whole thing out, file, save as an SVG file. It'll probably default to Illustrator. So to cut on origin, we'll give it a name, shape V003. And then these are the default settings, they should be good. Okay. And then I'll just show you what that file looks like. So that's great. That's ready to cut on origin. Right, so we'll take that file dropped on a USB, and we've already scanned in our workpiece, so we can see tape up here, workspace, and now we're just going to add the file from the USB. Here we go. So we can place that wherever we like and get straight to cutting it. So I'm in the design mode. I'm going to move over to the cut mode. So we have a 1/4 inch cutter, and we're doing an air cut. So we're hovering above the surface. So I'll just quickly sort of show what we're dealing with. Holding down auto, we cut that hole. So you do the small interior details first, and then you cut the whole thing out as the last step. So I'm going to do these little circles. And then we'll do the pockets. I'm actually going to change these to inside lines. I'm going to do that to all 3 of them. You'll notice it highlights as a pocket, and I can tell it to be otherwise. So it's telling me which direction to go. Plunge. Around. So you'll see we remove all the material. Because it's 1/2 inch wide and I'm using a 1/4 inch cutter, the cut history is showing me that can remove all that material in one pass. So we're obviously not cutting, we're hovering above the surface. My spindle's unplugged. But this is giving us a quick overview of the shapes we made and how straightforward it is to go from design to cut. So this would be a very similar amount of time if you're actually cutting. So zoom out from that. You see there we've cut everything at the right scale.